I'm Victor Kline. I'm the leader of the New Liberals. We're a party that's been around now for about 2 years. We're a real liberal party in the sense that that word is understood around the world and has been for about 200 years to mean a party that believes in justice, equality of opportunity, compassion, and of course freedom, but a strong place for government to ensure that in exercising that freedom, the individual doesn't impinge on the freedom of others. We are, I suppose, at least on an economic level, the true inheritors of Menzies liberalism, unlike the current government, the Liberal Party of Australia, which is probably now the most, ironically using the word liberal, the most conservative government in the Western world. I'm personally running for the lower house seat of North Sydney. We have about 20 candidates standing in the next election, and we're hopeful of probably taking 2 or 3 seats in the lower house and another couple in the Senate. That's where we're at the moment. We started this new party because we, like many millions of people in Australia, feel that choice has been taken away from us. We have now a duopoly, which is 2 major parties that are almost indistinguishable from one another, that people are starting to call the alternative autocracies. You have a choice of which autocracy you want to vote for, but it doesn't really make much difference, and that's the limit of your choice. People are getting very frustrated with that. We decided to form the party because we wanted to bring some real people back into politics. We are all non-careerist politicians. And in terms of who we are seeking to attract, I think in the long run, we are seeking to attract all those disaffected voters, which is probably something like 80% of the community. The fringe dwellers, we wouldn't attract because we are a sensible, centrist style party. The first people we attracted into membership and supporters and followers were largely moderate, disaffected Liberal voters who felt that their party had been stolen from them. And they were looking for a real Liberal Party to vote for. But over time, many people who would be seen as traditional Labor or even Greens voters started to realise that we were using the word Liberal in its proper sense of the word, and we were nothing like the current Liberal Party of Australia. In fact, we were antithetical to them. And so the interesting fact is that in the last 3 months, probably 80% of new members joining the party have come from that other side of politics, from Labor and disaffected Labor and Greens voters. So I guess we have a charter of core values, which we have on the website and which we put there deliberately so that people know what we're about and will be able to hold us to account if we vary from that. And when we first tested that out on voters of all persuasions, we found that everybody we tested on, people who were Greens voters, Labor voters, Liberal voters, national voters, even Christian Democrat voters, they all agreed on what was contained in that charter of core values. And the reason they did that was because what we were setting out was not really a political manifesto, but a statement of what all civilized people will agree a democracy should be about, and which our democracy has ceased to be about in many cases, as it slides towards a kind of new Argentina. I think we have taken inspiration from the fact that throughout the world, this discontent that Australians are feeling is felt by other people in almost say so-called Western democracies now. And there has been what's called a populist movement. Now, most people associate that with right-wing politics like Trump and so on, but it doesn't have to be. Macron was a left-wing populist. The point about populism is not that it is left or right. It is that it's about, by definition, an appeal to the people directly instead of an appeal to the political class. So in many ways, we're doing what, as are the various independence movements in Australia, are doing what Macron, what Trump, and what many others have been doing around the world, in that broader sense of saying, You've been let down by the system. The system has become a self-serving entity run by professional politicians for their own interests, not for the interests of the people. And we're giving you an alternative to that. Yes, in terms of what our flagship policies would be, obviously everybody, every civilized, caring, thinking party in the world must have climate change as its flagship policy, because we are in what is quite literally a war to save this planet from combustion. I was on a show with our Senate #1 candidate, Professor Stephen Keen, last night, and he was talking at some length about how the ozone layer can be completely dissipated by a rise of 2.5 to 3 degrees in temperature, and thus the destruction of the human race. That has to be our flagship policy. And we have recently agreed with so many people around the world who are saying that we are now in a climate crisis. And we did have, along with the Greens, the strongest net zero emission target of 2035 in the country, and we've reduced that to 2030. Now, a lot of people say that's not doable, and we say it has to be doable, and we'll do it. So that's our flagship policy, but is it our #1 policy? It probably isn't, ironically. Our #1 policy is our federal ICAC, which will be a strong body with powers to investigate and prosecute politicians, judges, and bureaucrats who've been corrupt, who have abused their power, or who have acted in dereliction of their duty. And there will be a separate court, constitutionally entrenched court, for the prosecution of corrupt practices, where these people will be tried by a judge and jury, and if found guilty, sent to jail. And it will be a retrospective policy. And that is because although climate change is the #1 thing that everyone must be concerned about, the level of corruption in our country has become so profound and so open and flagrant that it is the major driving force that's causing people to lose faith in the democratic system, and the major driving force that will take us towards a dictatorship quite easily. And so we have to address that first, if you like. That has to be our priority. And so, because if we don't do that, if we don't clean up the corruption in politics, then nothing will be done for climate change or anything else for that matter. I suppose the third string to our bow, and we have obviously a suite of 70 or 80 detailed policies, but the third string to our bow would be the fact that the corruption in this government and the domination of the donor system and the corporate domination of political parties, along with the protection racket run by Rupert Murdoch, means that about 3.2 million people have been driven below the poverty line. And simultaneously with our climate policy and our anti-corruption policy, we want to introduce a job guarantee scheme that will create a Menzies-style full employment and get those people above the poverty line.